Okay, it is the beginning of April 2023, so I wanted to do a little deck update. I'm putting out a number of kind of decks to review and things that could be fun to play with. So this one's going to be a little bit of a continuation of the deck that I showed last month of Crusadia Mekk. It is the deck that I played to get through King of Games in March. Wasn't overly difficult and going to cover a little bit of that. I am not going to go through the deck fully and explain like every card, what they do, how to play, all of that. I did that last month, and then a lot of my gameplay from the previous month is with this deck too. So hopefully that content can help get you to learn the way of playing it if you want to. So this is just going to cover kind of changes I've made and observations I've had. So the first thing I like is it is very flexible. Um, we are looking at a hybrid deck, so we have the Mekk-Knights and we also have the Crusadia cards. And of course, we have 3 Kaiju cards, so you can do a little bit of everything. You're not relying on one place alone. And you can deal with a number of different decks because of that good balance there. Whether it is Phantom Knights, which are very, very common, or anything of the sort. Like a Kaiju is the ultimate equalizer of they spend their whole turn getting their most powerful cards in the field. You can get the cards off the field with one card, and then, if you have a second Kaiju in hand, you can bring that one out, those type of stuff. But in addition to being powerful on their own with doing that, the Kaiju cards also work well with Equimax, which is the goal of what you're really trying to bring out here to get all those attack points and just clear it out. I've also started to use the deck a little more defensively, like with Equimax's effect of nullifying like a certain trap or card or effect. Um, and then Arboria's effect also of protecting like cards in the graveyard. You could also consider playing like Dark Hole in this deck because I believe this would actually protect all of your Crusadia cards in the field when that effect goes off instead of just one of them, because I had that happen a few times throughout the month, and that's the way it works. So really powerful there for protection purposes, because at first I was under the impression this would be a little bit of a glass cannon, but there's definitely more defense to it than I've realized, and I've also figured out like combos for playing where for the Mekk-Knights, if you have Indigo out in the field and you have Equimax kind of pointing to it, then Indigo can't attack, because the card that it points to can't attack because it's kind of having the attack points go to Equimax. But right after that, you can activate Indigo's effect, move it over, and then it can attack because it's no longer in the square that Equimax points to. So a lot of little kind of nifty tricks like that are very, very helpful. Usually when people are playing Mekk-Knights, they'll play 3 purples and then like 1 Indigo. I have it at 2 and 2 here, and the reason for that is I find Indigo is maybe more valuable in this deck than kind of the classic Mekk-Knights deck because of what I was just mentioning about those combos of moving around and a little bit more flexibility. So definitely my preference, but ultimately I am keeping 4 level 8 monsters, outside, or 4 level 8 Mekk-Knights, not counting the Kaijus on the field or in the deck because that makes it very easy to bring the Galaxy Eyes monsters out, and don't need to talk about how powerful they are with all of the recent kind of approaches in the meta. Now, this is a little bit different than if you see like other people playing this deck, what they do. So for the limited 3, I have 1 Blue Sky, I have 1 Memory, and I have 1 Ice Dragon's Prison. Blue Sky speaks for itself, right? You can pull multiple cards out of the deck. You can use purple to search for Blue Sky and all of that. You don't need multiple. I don't think anyone right now is playing multiple. The one thing that's a little different is I'm playing 1 memory instead of 2. Most people are playing 2 memories, and then which takes up the 3 limited 3 cards you have. Memory is nice defensively. It can save you if you have no monsters in the field and your opponent's attacking. You can bring something out there. You can obviously activate it at the end of your opponent's turn and bring 1 purple out, and then use its effect to bring another card into your hand, yada yada yada. But because this isn't a Mekk-Knights focused deck, I just don't feel the need to have 2 memories. You can only activate 1 per turn, and ideally with this deck, you move as quickly as possible, seeing how much attack power you have, and you can get cards off the field. So with that, I think the Ice Dragon's Prison is good to have 1 in there. The card has really grown on me. You can obviously summon a monster from your opponent's graveyard. You can banish 1 if you want, or you can just keep that card. So almost like a monster reborn with a little bit of flexibility. Now, the next kind of thing that's I've gone back and forth a few times on, and not to say this is even final at all. I have World Legacy Secret in here. May not seem surprising, but I just don't find it to be that powerful within this deck. The reason for that is Mekk-Knights are not totally the focus. As you can see, is we don't have that many of the cards in the deck, so you know, if you have Indigo out, you can move it around to try to block an effect. Another reason why I'm going to have multiple Indigos instead of just a one. But, you know, when you're used to using the classic Mekk-Knight deck that has all of those Mekk-Knight monsters and you can have one per column and just block every effect, it's really, really powerful. But with only having a few, you're not most likely not going to be able to block every single column, and its power is a little bit diminished. I haven't had that many duels with it where it's kind of stayed out and had a meaningful impact, unlike the past where I've been able to just really shut people down. So at a few points I had played with Mirror Force instead. That wasn't too impactful because, as everyone knows, Mirror Force is a pretty slow card. It can be, you know, difficult to activate because you have to wait until there's an attack, and people can snipe it off your back row pretty easily. Very powerful when used, but not the most impactful either. I think I activated it like one time out of all of the duels I had in my deck, and I think it saved my backside there, but still, it was pretty rare occurrence, and Limited One is a very powerful card, so you want to try to find the best one to have, and typically you do, not as a general rule, have one in your deck, not required, but you know, they're powerful and you like powerful cards. And to wrap up, I have 2 Warning Points and 2 Bottomless Trap Holes. I don't need to talk too much about these cards. Very, very powerful, and you know, like a month ago, 2 months ago, when the Mekk-Knights were very powerful, and you could have all of your limited 3s be from traps, then that was great. But these traps are almost as powerful as the limited traps, and definitely are gonna, you know, stifle your opponent there, and will do the job. So no big changes through the extra deck. We have the 2 Galaxy Eyes, we have 1 Equimax, 1 Morning Star, which I think is awesome, can be used defensively. I have been using Knightmare Phoenix a little bit more just to pick off the back row. And we have 2 Magius and 1 Spatha. If you wanted to play like a pure Crusadia deck, you could kind of double up on the Spatha, you could double up on Equimax, a little bit of flexibility, but I found this balance works really nicely. So this is how I'm playing it right now. There are a couple of tweaks that I'm considering making for round 2 of the KC Cup. Not going to include those here. If they work out, I'll show after, but you know, I want to battle test them a little bit and see how they work out. So stay tuned for that. The last thing I want to cover is the skill that I'm using. I'm using Age Mechs right now. The reason for that is it guarantees me to get a card that I can put on my back row. So if in my first hand I have like Mekk-Knight cards, then a little bit easier to get out. However, with the balance between spells and traps versus monsters here, it is pretty rare to have like all monsters and no spells or traps. So I don't think that this is totally necessary with the balance I have. You could, like, if you want to use something that's putting a card in your back row, you could use Age Mechs. You could use like the Tuna World Pegasus one. You can do the one that Alexis Rhodes has that will give you the Ritual Cage in your back row. So if you're trying to like level one of your characters up, then just pick that one and do that. But the other thing that I'm going to test around is using 3 effects with Playmaker and I. The reason I think it's a really good fit is because, again, you generally don't have the issue where you can't get a card into your back row. However, you know, you want to really load up your Equimax. Like, I've had times where I've had Equimax up to like 7,000 or 8,000 attack points, and before you attack, like, you can never guarantee that'll be the end of the duel. And if you use 3 effects, then it's going to allow you to add that many life points. So even if you were to just, you know, then attack, get your opponent flips over a Mirror Force and just wipes your field, and you're left just blank, adding 7,000 life points is going to survive you at least one more turn without really much in return. So if the card in your back row is not that helpful to you, then that is definitely another route to go, for example. But a little bit of preference there for sure. And this is the Crusadia Mekk deck that I will be playing, you know, at least as planned through the month of April. So let me know your thoughts below, if this is a deck you've played, or if you've played any other variations. Yeah, so happy to hear your feedback there.